Hi everyone, welcome back again. So I wanted to take you guys with me to work at Thetha Fm, one of the biggest radio station in the Vaal. I work there as one of their news anchors. So I usually wake up around 4 a.m. so that I can prepare to go to work, and about 5 a.m. I must be out of the house. As you can see, this is me going to catch a taxi. So from Finetown to Golden Gardens, which is where the station is situated, it takes me about 2 taxis, and which is like an hour or so. So this is me going to catch my first taxi from Finetown to Everton Mall, and then from there to the station. It was extremely cold today, and I think I waited about 25 minutes until the first taxi came. I was freezing to death. So 25 minutes later, my first taxi arrived, which transported me from Finetown to Everton Mall. From Finetown to Everton is not that much of a distance because there are few places that you have to pass by first. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's an informal settlement called Jovijo, and then there's Orange Farm, and then there's Palm Springs, and then there's Everton. Few minutes later, I arrived at Everton Mall. Now I was waiting for my second taxi, which was going to transport me from Everton Mall to Golden Gardens. So the taxi eventually showed up, and I was on my way to work. So I eventually arrived at the radio station. I was on my way to the studio. As you can tell by the video, it was extremely cold and the mist was all over the place. I didn't have any hand gloves. My hands and my fingers were extremely frozen. I finally made it to the radio station. So here guys, let me give you a mini radio station tour. So as you can see, we walk into a reception area. Because I work quite an early shift, there was no one in the reception. So this is our newsroom. It was extremely dark. I don't think the lights in our newsroom work. So as you can see, it's just a television and 2 computers. As we walk by, we can see the studio number 2 where presenters usually broadcast their stuff. You can tell that there's someone in there. And then there's studio number 2 where production takes place, all the technicalities and sound. As we proceed, we walk into a kitchen area. As you guys can see, it's quite a small space because it is a community radio station after all. And then as you walk to that side, it's just bathrooms where you do your own business. Unfortunately, time was not on my side, so I had to rush to the newsroom to compile, edit, rehearse all my news for the 7 o'clock news bulletin. So the people who used this room at night, I think they were doing graveyard shift. They were watching some soapy, so I had to change it to a news channel because, I mean, it's obvious. 7 o'clock, which will be my first news bulletin. So my news bulletin comprises of 3 stories, which is number 1 is the local story, number 2 is the national story, and then the last one is an international story. And then if I'm doing or I'm standing in for someone during the week, I'll also add financial indicators and commodities. But because it's during the weekend now, I didn't add those because the JSE is not operational during the weekend. So I just finished off my news bulletin with the weather update for Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Vereeniging. Good morning, it's exactly 10 o'clock. Let's quickly take a look at our headlines, followed by our full bulletin news for this hour. Thetha Fm News, and I'm Lebohang Dashe. Petro SA to assist Eskom in bringing down higher stages of rolling blackouts. Toyota South Africa says that production of 3,500 vehicles lost due to load shedding. And lastly, ahead of financing summit, France lobbies G7 over Africa's debt and climate impact. Full details on those stories coming up next.
Ubuhloka ufumana funeral cover yabuleng bo di. Jalo ka o le bohloka ufumana ditaba tsa hora le hora se ya moyeng. Tiro Funeral Solutions. Setjhaba se kgotsofetse. Wena o emetse enna.
Petro SA, which imports diesel into the South African markets, knows that while demand for the fuel has shot up in light of the ongoing load shedding, the market remains well supplied, even seeing a downward trend in prices due to a boost in international supply from different regions. As a state-owned company, it has been focused on assisting Eskom to be well supplied with the diesel to bring down the higher stages of load shedding. The executive of Trade and Supply for Petro SA, Vusi Kaba, says that it will ensure that Eskom is not exposed to higher pricing. Petro SA says that in line with the government's move to create a national oil company, it is already working right across the fuel supply chain with various partners to better ensure energy security in the country, and that in the long term, securing more crude oil refinery capacity in the country is a key goal. Be that as may, load shedding has increased the cost of doing business, with fuel services station profitability under pressure as they ironically have to utilize diesel to run their operations. The Reserve Bank has warned that as people look to alternatives to power their homes and businesses like diesel generators, this is likely to add at least 0.5 percentage point to inflation this year. Unfortunately, it looks as though the cost of credit is also set to rise further when the central bank, announces its rate decision next week. Still continuing with electricity-related news, government will investigate how to help the automotive industry to minimize the impact of load shedding. That's according to Electricity Minister Kgosi Ramokgopa. He concluded a series of meetings with automotive manufacturers in Durban yesterday, including discussions with Toyota South Africa CEO Andrew Kirby. Ramokgopa says that while auto manufacturers are exempt from load shedding, the manufacturers of parts and components are still affected. Meanwhile, Kirby says that Toyota's plant in Durban lost a production of 3,500 vehicles in the first 3 months of the year due to power outage and dips in the electricity current supplied to them from the grid. He has also called for the fast-tracking of agreements to allow companies to feed the excessive renewable energy they generate on site into the grid. And lastly, let's quickly take a look at our international story for this hour. French officials